Chapter 21. The bridge was indeed beautiful, though it wasn't much like Sophie. At least, Sophie couldn't see it. It was fine wrought, with gold-painted railings and pigeons roosting on each end. They ran, the three of them, down stone steps and came to rest under the bridge. Matteo wasn't anywhere. "Did he say he'd be waiting?" said Sophie. "Can you see him?" "He'll be here somewhere," said Anastasia. She whistled, not very well, the same whistle that Matteo had used on the tightrope. They waited. Matteo was still nowhere. "You try," said Anastasia. "He said you had a good whistle." Sophie tried to remember the shape her lips had made. She whistled, and then again louder and sharper. "Again?" said Anastasia. Sophie whistled until her lips buzzed and her ears hurt. She was just about to give up when there was a thump, and Matteo appeared walking swiftly along the railing of the bridge. "Bonsoir!" He sat on the rail and called down to them. "Are you ready?" "Ready for what? Why won't you tell me?" Sophie hissed. "And keep your voice down. I can't be seen." "I thought you might not come if I told you. Take off your shoes." "Why wouldn't I come?" Sophie bent to untie her laces. "Because the water's so cold," he said matter-of-factly. "It's like swimming in frostbite. We're going river sieving." "River sieving?" Sophie halted, one shoe in her hand. "Diving for coins. If I really need money, I collect coins from under the bridges, and sometimes there's wedding rings. People throw them in. I don't know why." He shrugged. "But you can sell them, sometimes." "But those coins are wishes. You're stealing other people's wishes." The look Matteo gave her was so flinty she could have chipped a tooth on it. "If you have money to waste on wishes, you don't need the wishes as badly as I need the money." He stood on the rail, rose onto his toes, and disappeared in a flawless dive. Sophie stood at the edge, waiting. It was almost 2 minutes before his head came up. He swam to the edge and dropped a handful of coppers at her feet. "You said you could swim?" he said. "Safi and Steja can't much." "I can, yes. I might not have told you if I'd known what you were asking." Sophie crouched at the water's edge. It was midnight blue, and the stars shone on its surface. It looked secretive. Sophie bent until she could see her reflection. She looked secretive too, and more beautiful than she'd expected. She dipped a finger in the water. "My God, Matteo!" It was icy. Her toes contracted in protest. "Then come on," said Matteo. "There's a lot. If we leave it there, the Gachias will take it." And as Sophie ran to the edge, he hissed, "Take your other shoe off first, and quietly." "I was going to." She pulled off her shoe and trousers and jersey and bundled them into a corner under the bridge, but left her pants and vest on. She glared at him and dived, with some splash, but still quite well, she thought, into the water. "Oh, it's freezing!" Sophie gasped and retched as the water clutched at her. She spat out a mouthful. "You sound like a water buffalo," said Matteo, treading water. "Come this way. The tide shifts most of the coins to the left. Over here. Keep moving, or your heart stops." He dived under, and she waited, kicking her frozen feet until he came up. "Matteo," she said, "listen to me. I won't help until you tell me something." "What? I'm icing over inside, Sophie. This isn't a good moment." "Those boys who live on the station. What's wrong with them?" Matteo shrugged, which is not easy to do whilst treading water. He said, "They're dirty." Sophie said nothing. She tried not to let her gaze flick to the girl standing on the bank, dressed only in mud and rags. Matteo saw. Matteo, Sophie thought, saw everything. It was very annoying. "There's good dirt and bad dirt," he said to her. "The Gachias are bad dirt." "Which is which, though?" said Sophie. "What counts as good dirt?" "Je ne sais pas." Matteo scowled at her, as he always did when she asked questions. "I don't know. Ah, je m'en fous." He says he doesn't know, he doesn't care," called Anastasia. She must have been listening from the bank of the river. "I suppose good dirt is soil and roof dust." Safi made a sign. Anastasia added, "And tree dust also." Matteo said. And the grit you get if you run your hand along the top of a stone bridge. Bad dirt is dried blood. And sewerage, and the chimney dust on bad days. Sophie knew that by now. The chimney smoke could be corrosive in the nostrils. Usually it's not too bad, said Anastasia. But when there's no wind and the air is damp, it sucks up the smoke and wipes it over your face. Sophie had noticed this. She had also noticed that Matteo picked his nose a lot more than most people, and that on smoggy days the snot was black. And pigeon fat, said Anastasia. Pigeon fat's bad dirt. No, said Matteo. He turned and swam away from them. No, pigeon fat is good dirt. Anastasia exchanged a meaningful look with Sophie. A tiny bit is okay, maybe. More than a tiny bit, and you'll start smelling like an open wound. Anyway, it's not just dirt. They're vicious, they're guerriers. They're like animals. Sophie thought about that. Matteo had always struck her as being like an animal, a cat or a fox. Anastasia and Safi moved with the same shifts and swings as monkeys. Is that bad, to be like animals? Anastasia said. They're like dogs. Have you ever seen a mad dog? They're cruel in the eyes. Do they bite? She had expected the two girls to laugh, but they just stared back at her. Nobody moved or smiled. At last, Safi nodded. Matteo popped up next to her, panting. He said, Oui, they bite. Come on, before my teeth freeze together. There was very little current, so the swimming was easy, but the water was murky, and in the dark it was almost impossible to see the glint of copper. Sophie found what she could by groping about on the riverbed. She and Matteo dived 6, then 7 times, swimming to the side whenever they had a handful. She was gratified to find that her pile on the bank was double the size of his. Oh, it's my fingers, he said. Sophie and Anastasia exchanged another glance. I can't feel what is a coin and what is a stone. Of course, said Sophie. Of course it is. When Anastasia called out that they had more than 3 francs, Matteo said that was enough. They swam, half racing, to the bank. Sophie was faster, but Matteo reached out and ducked her under just as she was reaching for the edge. Cheat! She came up, spitting. You're a filthy cheater! Cheating doesn't exist for roof-toppers, said Matteo. There's just alive or dead. Anyway, that is not cheating, said Anastasia. That's fighting. Fighting's better than cheating. She hauled Sophie out of the water and handed her a square of chocolate. Matteo stayed in the water. Anastasia passed him another square, and he ate it while treading water. Thank you, said Sophie. Her voice came out in a croak. Swimming always makes me thirsty. Can I drink the river water? No, sorry. Rat disease. Even Matteo doesn't, and he's immune to most things. There'll be water when we get to the cathedral, though, said Anastasia. The cathedral? Sophie pulled on her borrowed jersey and stuffed her wet feet into her shoes. What cathedral? The cathedral, of course. Matteo will meet us there. Meet us there? But he's here. Sophie's head whipped around. Matteo had gone. He's like that, said Anastasia. He'll be going by the river and then the trees. Safi approached her silently and stroked down the parts of Sophie's hair that were scarecrowing and picked out the pondweed. She took Sophie's scarf from the ground and wound it round Sophie's head. Oh, said Sophie, I almost forgot about my hair. Her whole body swept with terror, and she tugged at the cloth far down over her ears. That was so stupid of me, thank you. Safi smiled, and then she suddenly blushed purple. She darted up the stairs and into the leaves of one of the trees lining the pavement. Will she be all right? Said Sophie. Anastasia gathered up the coins and stowed them in her pockets. Of course, she'll go by the treetop too, she said. Allez, if we walk quickly, you'll be dry by the time we reach Notre Dame. Race you up the stairs.